talk a bit about Open Knowledge Maps as a project in the field of open science, but also talk a bit about the background, what is necessary to get an open science tool really off the ground. My name is Christopher Kittel. I'm part of the Open Knowledge Maps team, and I'm responsible for everything concerned with data science and machine learning. Okay, let's get started. We've heard already a bit about the research cycle, which in many cases starts with discovery. And I will do a quick classical example. If, for example, you want to know more about educational technology, you go to a certain unnamed search engine, type in your search query, and then you are overwhelmed by thousands or possibly millions of search results which are presented in a list format. So, and if you want to understand what's really going on in the field of educational technology, and you're new to it, you maybe start by finding a highly cited overview, a book or a paper. You read it, you go through it, you extract important topics, authors, trends, and then you repeat the cycle quite a few times until you have a mental map of this field and you can orient yourself in it. And if you're in a very specialized field or writing a PhD thesis, this can sometimes take the first whole year of this whole endeavor. The second motivation for us is that we sometimes may feel like this poor person here who gets swarmed in information. Current data points say that about 2.5 or 3 million papers are published each year, and even once you have managed to get an overview and an initial understanding of a research field, it's super resource intensive to keep this overview up to date. And we also see this in some statistics of uncitedness for publication, depending on the discipline. This ranges from 12 to 82% of published research papers which never get cited. In data, this is even more extreme. About 85% of all data sets are never cited beyond the original paper or publication. And another poor statistics concerns the transfer from practice, from theory to practice, from research results to really beneficial impact for society. And even in practical fields like medicine, this can take up to 17 years when it happens, because this also only happens for about 14% of research results. So we can come up with this hypothesis that there's a discoverability crisis that negatively impacts effectiveness and efficiency of science, and also the transfer of science into practice. So these are our motivations. And who are we as a project? Open Knowledge Maps is a charitable non-profit organization which is dedicated to dramatically improving the visibility and discoverability of scientific knowledge for science, but also for society as a whole. And how do we propose to solve this problem? Instead of this list format, when you enter a new field, we want to solve this with knowledge maps. And on knowledge maps, you get a visual overview of a new topic, where you can, at the first glance, identify the main topics in a field. For example, for heart diseases, this could be risk factors, types of diseases, or ways of preventing them. But then also do you get a very quick overview, but also you can decide what is more interesting for your current research than other documents. You immediately can access associated research artifacts like papers or data sets. And another benefit that we are working on is that you can, the closeness of the placement of bubbles indicates the topical similarity. For example, risk factors is closer related by the content it is written about to types of diseases than to the topic of prevention. This is not an actual map, of course. And our mission as a whole is to create a visual interface based on these knowledge maps, which works not only for one specific field, but this should be a universal tool that works for all disciplines and every topic. And finally, we want to change this discovery process from a closed and individualistic one, how it is happening in most cases right now, to a shared and collaborative one, because we can work quite reasonably under the assumption that for many discovery tasks, someone somewhere out there has already done something very similar. But the outcome of this work is not accessible and not communicated. And we think there's a huge potential to build on top of each other's work, also in the field of, also at the research step of discovery already. Okay, this is for the introduction. I will now give a short demo of how it works in practice. Once you go to openknowledgemaps.org, you will find yourself on this search interface where you can currently select between two meta-aggregators, PubMed, which is specialized on the life sciences, and Bayes, which covers all disciplines. And in the case of Bayes, it aggregates institutional repositories from libraries, universities, publishers, and currently I think has more than 120 million research artifacts in its database, which includes not only publications, but also data sets, software, images, whatever comes out of a research project. And then you can type in, is it not the same? Ah, yeah, it's not the same. How do I get my browser onto this screen?
Just push it to left or right.
Okay. Now I need to find my mouse. Okay, here it is. And you enter your search term just as before. And based on the 100 most relevant papers returned by the search engine, you then get this overview about the research in digital education. You can adjust your search, for example, by only looking what has been published in the last year. You could also select certain data types that you want to return if you're only interested in, for example, in images. And then you can identify which are the topics that are most interesting for my current research. For example, if I would be interested in digital literacy, I would have a closer look at this bubble here. And in this field, in this bubble, you can then see the assorted publications that are most closely related to the topic of digital literacy, digital citizenship. And in many cases, it is possibly also available as a PDF. So you can immediately have a look at the document itself. Okay, let's go back to the map as a whole. So we try to realize four advantages. One is that you get a quick overview of a research field and to speed up this process. What previously would have taken perhaps hours or days we want it to happen in mere seconds. The second advantage is that it should help you to identify relevant concepts. For example, if you would be more interested in digital citizenship than digital literacy, you could ignore other bubbles and only focus on the topics that are relevant for your current research. And finally, while we want to make all of scientific knowledge accessible, we will always highlight open access content, because for many people outside of the field of academia, this is the only scientific knowledge that they can access. And since the topic of the day is open science methods and tools, I also want to highlight that we try to implement the ideals of open science in all aspects of our work. Our source code is openly available on GitHub. The maps themselves are under a CC BY license, so you can reuse them in any way possible as long as you credit the project. The underlying data structures, because we believe there's no copyright on data itself, is under a public domain. And also the roadmap, the way you want to develop the project forward, is openly available. And we collect feedback on it and user input from many different communities in different ways, because we want to get to this mode of co-creation where the project itself is developed also by the people that use it. The project started about 2.5 years ago, and it had seen quite some usage. So we know that we have found a niche already, with more than 500,000 visits on the site, more than 100,000 maps created, and more than 1,500 participants in workshop all over the world. In the beginning, so right now the team consists of 10 people, and in the beginning Open Knowledge Maps was a pure volunteer-driven project, and only since 2018 some of the work has been funded. We also have the KNOW Center from Graz, the Center for Big Data Research, as an organization member. And in the beginning of 2019, we very happily welcomed the Ludwig Boltzmann Gesellschaft as our first supporting member. You also have an advisory board which reflects the diversity of the community and helps us guide the project forward, representing libraries, scientists, journalists, students, the civil society, educators. And maybe you have spotted one of them who is also present here today. A big shout out to our advisors who are on board. Thank you. And we also partner with a number of organizations from the whole field of open science, because we believe that this whole transition is only possible in collaboration. And given the size and resources that we can access, this can only work if many different organizations work together at many small parts of the process. And I've mentioned our enthusiast outreach program, and the enthusiasts are our way of accessing many different communities from all over the world, and they spread the word by, for example, also holding workshops, and they provide us with valuable input and feedback, and help us in shaping the project by better understanding what our users need. We also have a strong partnership with libraries, of course. They are among our most important advisors and partners. but we also aim to give something back, of course, in the way to increase the visibility of library content by making it better accessible, making it better findable, providing new ways of interact with the collections that libraries have built up. Also in a very practical way, simply by developing new innovative open source projects. And one of them is the Linkart Plus project. I think I have still a few minutes to talk also about this in more detail. It is a collaboration project between the Austrian Academy of Sciences, the Austrian Center for Digital Humanities, and Open Knowledge Maps. And the idea is to make the collection of the Sitzungsprotokoll, of the proceedings, which has never been made accessible before, accessible. There was quite an alliteration. So when I'm talking about Sitzungsberichte, this is the third example today about transcribing old text. Those are the proceedings of the meetings of members of the Austrian Academy of Sciences between 1858 and 1918 or so. So it's more than half a century. And it looks like this. It's scanned text, and they have been transcribed or OCR scanned. The texts are from authors like Erwin Schrödinger, Christian Doppler, and other well-known figures. And the idea is that the problem that we want to solve within the project is that so far these proceedings haven't been systematically available. So I think it was already mentioned that the process of reading and accessing those very precious old texts can be technically and organizationally very difficult. So in order to make them more accessible and discoverable and reusable, this should happen through a nice, user-friendly web interface. And also to improve the data set as a whole, by providing it as a linked open data to enable feature-rich visual exploration and also to allow open access to full texts. Copyright doesn't apply anymore after 70 years. To wrap it up, we tried, I already mentioned that we tried to be as open as possible. This includes also all of the services and infrastructure that we offer, not only for Base or PubMed, but we also created an integration for the OpenAIRE database, where you can view the research outputs of projects that have been funded under a European Union funding scheme. We also conduct a wide range of training activities and materials, of community support and engagement programs. And of course, the software itself is freely available under an open source license, so users always have the chance to make changes, to adapt it to their own collection and to their own needs without having to pay us or ask us for permission. One big question, of course, is how is this all funded, or how do we want it to be funded? As a non-profit association in the field of open science, our practical ways of funding are quite limited in comparison to, I don't know, venture capital-backed startups. So we propose to fund open knowledge maps in a collective effort where organizations become supporting members and provide a yearly contribution to keep it running. And in return, these supporting members receive a say and have a say in the technological development of the project and in the decision-making process of what features we should develop or what data sources we should make accessible next. And of course, to further acknowledge their contribution, members are listed on our website and certain materials. And to put some numbers on that idea, we have 3 different membership categories: the supporting member, the sustaining member, and the sustaining member plus. And they differ in, of course, the yearly contribution that they make, and then in the number of seats they receive on the board of supporters. And finally, I want to get back to the original idea of collaborative discovery, which for us is a very interesting but still a long-term goal. And I want to show you a quick video of how we envision this collaborative discovery process. Okay. Do we have sound?
Sarah is a first-year PhD
Nice.
student in biomedicine, starting a thesis on the Zika virus. Open Knowledge Maps has automatically created a map on the Zika virus for her. Sarah identifies a number of articles that warrant their own area. So she goes into edit mode. She adds a new area and drags the papers she found into the newly created bubble. She adds a title and places the area on the map. Sarah's interrupted by a message from a supervisor, Lauren. Lauren suggests a presentation related to the Zika virus that she's added to their joint Zotero group. Sarah connects OKMaps to her Zotero account and imports the presentation into her map. OKMaps automatically places the new content on the map. Sarah publishes and tweets the link of her map for other users to explore and modify on OKMaps. The next day, she fires up her email to see that fellow PhD student Amar has added several papers to her map. She also notices that Tom, who's working on a map on Aedes, has included her map as a submap of his.
Yes, that was the last, hopefully inspiring point I wanted to make. Thank you for your attention, and I think we still have time for some questions.
Thank you very much.